Welcome, everybody. So I want to introduce myself again. My name is Aurelio Mendoza. I'm a fellow with Central California Environmental Justice Network. My counterpart, Yesenia Venegas, is also another fellow that's providing support with initiatives regarding vegetative barriers, specifically within the AB 617 South Central Fresno community. And I would like to share my whoever has the capacity that it says a host disabled participant screen. I just wanted to bring up the agenda really quick. Is that okay? Can I get the keys to that, please?
You're good to go.
And just confirming with you folks, everybody can see our agenda? Perfect, okay. Again, and thank you everybody for making today's meeting. Again, Aurelio Mendoza, CCAGN fellow. I'll be facilitating this meeting. As a note taker, we'll have Yesenia Mendoza. As far as walking through the agenda here, we're going to allow, as Nayamin said in the chat, please provide your first and last, your contact information, first and last name, and the agency you're representing for attendance purposes. And that'll be the cover of the point, and that can be handled there via chat. Thank you very much. To cover here, point 2, collaboration opportunities. We're going to have Mark Standriff, the director of Beautify Fresno, that's going to be sharing City of Fresno's initiatives with supporting climate change efforts. We're also going to have another speaker that's going to be sharing some information from Tree Fresno, and they're going to speak to a scheduled tree planting activity, and that's going to be held on March 20th. Point 3 here, placement of vegetative barriers in urban greening projects. Also joining the discussion about discussing report on places with higher air pollution and having somebody share some thoughts there from the air district. Discuss a little bit of a mapping tool, again by the Air District, and then a survey. We're going to pitch the introduction of utilizing a survey as an instrument to obtain the community buy-in or the steering committee buy-in to support locations as to where a vegetative barrier can be created within the AB 617 South Central Fresno. So again, the discussion of a survey as an instrument to get a vote from the various entities that are going to be in charge of creating these vegetative barriers. And other thoughts here. As we go down to point 4, development of the framework for approval of vegetative barrier urban greening projects, and just again another discussion here. Probably a good opportunity here to bring into the conversation an example that was shared about in Imperial already moving forward with supporting guidelines as to how to support vegetative barriers and introduce them here within AB 617. So we welcome everybody's participation, and thank you very much again for being here. And I'm going to give the opportunity here to Mark Standriff to share some information regarding Beautify Fresno. Thank you very much for being here, Mark.
Thank you very much, Aurelio. And again, as I told Nayamin, I was very appreciative to get the invitation to speak to the group here. And as I have taken over the position of director of Beautify Fresno, I'm finding that there's a lot of partner organizations that, frankly, and admittedly, my fault for not looking into it more, but didn't know were there and available, and like-minded as we're, taking a look at some of the challenges we have here in the city of Fresno and what we can do to work together to face them, especially in our underserved communities. So Beautify Fresno, just to kind of explain things, is a starting point. You might have seen or heard about it on television. It's an initiative by Mayor Dyer to improve Fresno's curb appeal. And the idea is to use the concepts that we employ here at the city of Fresno with cleanup and beautification through our solid waste and sanitation departments, through public works in kind of fixing and cleaning up streets and sidewalks in neighborhoods. And then also our graffiti abatement team, which right now is placed within the Parks Department, but it's going to move over to Public Works. So my job is basically to oversee all of those folks to make sure that we're responding to concerns and complaints and service requests from our citizens to make sure that we're doing everything we can to clean and beautify the city. The purpose of the initiative is to eliminate as much trash, graffiti, and blight as we can, and then also create community-based beautification projects, many of which we worked with our partner organizations like Tree Fresno, because it goes much beyond. I mean, the things that are in the news have been mostly about cleanup events. So we're picking up trash in areas all over the city of Fresno, mostly concentrating on the west and south sides since we began in January. And I can tell you, it's pretty interesting. We've already picked up, just from the volunteer events alone, close to 3 tons of trash. Last weekend, we were along Parkside Drive between Olive and Belmont there, right off of the 99, and then a little bit north into North Crystal, where the Motel 99 and the McDonald's are. And just to kind of tell you about the enthusiasm that our residents have for this new program, we capped the reservations at 60 and had 102 people show. And with that, they picked up 166 bags of trash from around that area in a 2-hour period. So we know there's a need, but I also want to go beyond that. And that's one of the reasons why it was great to be able to, face-to-face connect with this committee, is because urban greening is also going to be very important for us. We know that there are a number of areas that desperately need our attention. And with that, I'm very pleased to say, and I know we've got a couple of Climate Action Corps fellows. I have 2 fellows that are working with us. We're one of the 28 local partners throughout the state of California who are dedicating our service to basically to do 3 things: to build community engagement, to mobilize volunteers, and then to kind of move the needle on climate action in our communities. And so we're supporting climate action projects in frontline and low-income communities around the state. We've made a few presentations already out there. I'm trying to connect with every single organization I possibly can. And we're also working in close cooperation with our council districts. So they're telling us about the areas of need. My goal by the time that we're finished, at least over this next year, and again, utilizing the services of our Climate Action Corps fellows, is to establish a landscape index that's citywide. I know that there's some efforts that have been already used, and through community meetings and plenty of discussions. I'm aware Mona sent me the community landscaping plan that had been put up in West Fresno a few years back. I want to make sure that we're current, and then through the long range planning committee, through our development department, to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page together, and then start looking into opportunities that the city can take to improve the urban greening that's out there. And it's not just about the parks, but I think it basically goes more into vegetative barriers, finding opportunities for us to plant trees or to replace the trees that are dying out there on many of our park strips and medians. And then finally to and this is a project I'm really excited about, to find some opportunities for building and maintaining community gardens, so that there are edible products that can be grown by our residents here in the Fresno area. So that's kind of basically it in a capsule. I'm happy to take any questions or to make some connections here so that we can continue to move forward. But if you see areas of need, especially when it comes to urban greening right now, I know that myself and our Climate Action Corps fellows would love to talk to you. So thanks again for the opportunity today.
You're muted, Aurelio.
There we go. Thank you very much for sharing that information. Certainly, as far as this whole climate change initiative and all the efforts that are going here, we certainly, this is all wonderful. to contribute to the discussion of what else can we do to beautify Fresno. This is our hometown, and I think it would be a wonder. Anything that you're sharing here is certainly it would be great to be at a stoplight, and maybe you're going to cross a light and you're going to see beautiful trees or some urban greening, and it's gonna it's really going to call us to really advocate for support for additional climate change efforts. So thank you very much for that, Mark.
Excuse me, I have a real quick question for Beautify Fresno. Because it will impact how we do our grant, right? Our grant. You know that Des Martinez has Safe Camp 1 and Safe Camp 2, and she wants to put a garden in both of them. And she also desperately needs trees in Safe Camp 2, which is the bigger lot. And she's going to need basically trees and big pots to create shade, especially with the upcoming spring and into the summer. So what is the city's plan to assist that homeless camp?
Well, this is the first I'm hearing about this. So frankly, at least as far as Beautify Fresno is concerned, I don't have a plan because I wasn't aware of that opportunity. But I'm happy to talk to Ms. Martinez, and let's see if there's an opportunity there for us, or at the very least to partner with Tree Fresno or maybe some other organization that might be willing to step in and help.
Yeah, because they can't plant, I don't believe they can plant trees in the ground because it's Caltrans property. But
yeah, see, that's been the bane of, not the bane of my existence, but that's been one of the challenges, because we can control everything that we need to within the city limits, or at least on our property or assets. But with Caltrans, we've got to move carefully, because we're not only negotiating with the local district, District 6, but also with Sacramento. And the same is true in dealing with the Fresno Irrigation District, the Flood Control District, and the various railroads whose properties tend to collect and gather areas of blight, and yet it's difficult for us to kind of work past them as well. So, but as I said before, and I probably didn't mention this at the beginning, but one of the challenges I'm having right now in this new position is that I'm basically building the plane while I'm flying it. So you'll have to forgive me if I'm not up to speed on a number of things. I'm trying to drink out of the fire hose as much as I can, but I appreciate getting this information and maybe even checking into that. So if you can kind of share that information with me, I think Naimeen has my contact information. I'm happy to reach out.
Okay,
I will give it to you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay. Mark, and again, thank you very much for sharing that. To keep the discussion going and be sensitive to our partners here from Tree Fresno. I definitely want to be sensitive to their time. Next person that we're going to welcome to the discussion is going to be Mona of Tree Fresno. And again, there's so many wonderful things happening, and certainly looking forward to her sharing some details and possibly sharing a volunteer opportunity for an upcoming tree planting event. So thank you very much, Mona, for being here.
Thanks, Aurelio. And first I want to say thank you to Mark, because Beautify Fresno has been such a great partner for us. I've been CEO of Tree Fresno for about 18 months now. And for at least the last year, we've been planting together and picking up litter across the city. And I think it's a really wonderful example about how we can collaborate to actually get further. So thank you, Mark, for that. And I am going to do like you all did, and we have Aurelio and Yesenia on conducting the meeting, is I'm actually going to pass the baton over to Eliza Jane and Alonzo to present on our upcoming project together on March 20th.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alonso, and yeah, I'll start out first just with a little translation of what Eliza Jane will be saying. So I'll start out with that. And yeah, thank you so much for having us. Buenas tardes. Nosotros somos Tree Fresno, una organización establecida en...
Alonso, there's simultaneous interpretation
okay.
going on, but thank you.
Okay. So Eliza Jane, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go. Excuse me if my audio cuts out. I believe Alonzo will be able to help me out if that happens. So thank you for allowing us to present on behalf of Tree Fresno. Tree Fresno was established in 1985 and is focused on expansion of the urban tree canopy. including expansion of green spaces like trails, parks throughout Fresno, Madera, Kings, and Tulare counties. So a project that we are working on that is coming up is the Green Valley Recycling High-Speed Rail Project. I know, a really long name. So this tree planting is part of the California High-Speed Rail Authority's effort to offset greenhouse gas emissions associated with HSR construction and achieve the HSR goal of zero net direct greenhouse gas emissions from construction. So the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection administers funds for tree planting programs on behalf of the authority per the interagency agreement. So Alonso is going to drop in the chat an example of some work that Tree Fresno has done with HSR. This is from May 2018. If you could do that, Alonso, and I will continue. So location plays a significant part in determining where Tree Fresno will install trees and irrigation. Under the HSR grant, the primary requirement is that the location be in a certain vicinity of the high-speed rail line. And this property is located right beneath the rail line. Alonso, if you can drop in the chat a picture of JVR. So another important factor of Tree Fresno is who controls the property and their willingness to take on the responsibilities of maintaining the trees and irrigation for decades to come. So JVR approached Tree Fresno and asked if we could help them develop a landscaping plan that would maximize the tree canopy coverage on their property in a way which would not hinder business performance. So the benefits of increasing tree canopy coverage on this property would be for the nearby community. So some of that includes mitigation of any environmental impact created through the construction of the HSR, reduction of dust flow, also serving as a windbreak around the property, increase of shade, which can lower the temperatures, reduction of greenhouse gases, contribute to climate change, carbon sequestration, tree store, and annually sequestered substantial amounts of carbon, water recharge, creation of a visual barrier between the company and the rest of the community. Those are just to name a few of the benefits of tree canopy coverage, and this will all be at the JVR planting, and that will be on March 24th, I believe, or 20th. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if you have any questions or anything, please put them in the chat. Thank you for your time.
Okay, and thank you very much for that, Eliza Jane.
Okay, let me just clarify. The date is Saturday, March 20th, so somewhat like the first day of spring. And we will be planting 361 trees. So there is a lot of work to do. This is a really great example of coming into spring volunteer planting that is going to be a little bit larger than we've had, as you guys can imagine, over the last year. So people have the opportunity to basically register online. And I'm sure we'll post the flyer in the chat if it's not already there. And they can indicate that they want to volunteer at this particular planting. They can sign the waiver and they can read the COVID-19 guidelines. And if we need to, we can actually create shifts so that there's more safety so to allow for social distancing.
Mona, I have a question regarding the people who would like to volunteer. Is that link available in Spanish as well, or how would our Spanish speakers sign up if they would like to volunteer? And also, is this open also for children, not only adults? Because we have heard of families that would like to come, the entire family.
Yes, all of Tree Fresno's events are family friendly, and we actually encourage households, including children, as long as the guardian is there, they can sign the waivers as well online. So yeah, definitely. And we can actually create, as you can see, We have Spanish speaking resources at the moment. Alonso can help us actually make replicate the flyer in Spanish so that we can direct people to our website. So we'll have a link to the website. We're going to send out an events email probably by the end of this week. And you may receive that in your inbox as well. So it'll click to the flyer and then the registration at Tree Fresno. So we'll make sure that's also available in Spanish. Thank you.
All right. Mona, thank you again so much for sharing that wonderful information. Certainly, Yesenia and I are excited about planting some trees. Definitely, that was one of the one of the things that prodded me to joining this effort is like, you know what, let's roll up our sleeves and let's break some soil and adhere to all the COVID-19 guidelines and certainly have a lot of fun. And this should be a really good opportunity to for community engagement and looking forward to building relationships by volunteering at that event and being involved in that whole process. Thank you.
Aurelio,
to move forward to the
Aurelio, I have a comment. May I?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, since you're talking about community and volunteer opportunities, I know that the steering committee members like Isabel, Estela, Lilia, and others were eager to actually, and Lisa, to start tree planting this spring. So as we would hear from the Air District and CARB later on, the process really for our projects to be ready, like the projects that are coming out of our SERP, are not going to be ready for this spring season. So that's why we wanted to bring this partnership opportunity with Tree Fresno and hopefully with Beautify Fresno to have some opportunities to do something right away. And it's a match because even though we are not paying for the trees, we're just pretty much helping with the event. It is certainly an area that aligns with AB 617, is within the community. And we thought it was a win-win situation. So just wanted to flag that out and that this is a great opportunity for all the steering committee members who had expressed interest in doing tree planting this spring.
It's our pleasure to encourage this kind of work. Thanks, Naomi.
Okay, and I think I think this is a perfect segue into have given an opportunity the floor to the Air District to share some information regarding their tree mapping tool, and also to join in the discussion. I know certainly as you have the floor, Air District.
Great. Well, I am going to kick it off. For those that don't know me, my name is Jessica Olson. I am a program manager with the Air District. I've worked with a lot of you closely with AB 617, but actually a couple of the other groups that I help manage are our air quality analysis and forecasting teams and our air quality modeling team. So it's actually pretty related to some of the stuff that I'm going to talk a little bit about right now. So we were asked to sort of go over, and you actually got an email, and I'm going to share this right now, just the email that you all have hopefully in your inbox, and let me know if you need some of these resources resent out to you. We can certainly do that. But we sent out a couple of the different links, or 3 different links kind of related to the items on the agenda, as well as a little handout. So one of the first thing that's asked of us that I think is really, really important, and to the nice segue sort of that Aurelio mentioned, is understanding the pollution, what's happening in the areas, in the regions that we're talking about planting trees. One of the things that Naimeen alluded to is not, it's going to take some time. We won't be ready with this project from the SERP standpoint by April. And that's not just because, there's a variety of funding things that we're going to talk about in a minute, but it's also because, especially when it comes to vegetative barriers, we need to do a lot of research, or maybe partner with someone to do a lot of research to make sure we're planting the best trees in the best location to provide that actual barrier to pollution. And so one of the couple of different tools that we can use, and I'm just going to sort of high level, obviously this isn't the meeting where we're going to analyze every little thing, but high level go over the tools that we already have available. Some of you will remember this from like a year and a half ago, right? When we use some of these maps to do our monitoring plan, and it's relevant to all of this today. And what this shows, and the handout that you got and some of the links that I'll show it's the 617 boundary. And based on the types of emissions we're talking about, so whether it's PM 2.5 or NOx, and the type of source we're talking about, so that could be area wide, something like maybe that construction activity that we were talking about earlier, or it could be residential wood burning, or it could be something that's more off-road emissions or on-road emissions. So those are like vehicles. All of these different maps essentially just map out where those different types of pollution are coming from, those different types of sources throughout the entire boundary. So this is just a refresher. The darker or redder the color, that just means more relative to the rest of the map. So the greener doesn't necessarily mean that area is clean by any means. It just means the emissions that are coming from that area is that much less than the emissions coming from those like darker areas. So you want to just start to, maybe this starts kind of getting the process going or the wheels turning a little bit on this, the areas that are near, this is the sensitive receptors. So areas maybe that are near schools that also have a red boundary around it when it comes to the emission sources. A couple of the other things, these are the on-road emissions. So this is, of course, I think we've talked a lot about this, and it's clear we want to put a lot, I think, of the vegetative barriers near where the on-road emissions are occurring. So this map just kind of maps out that same sort of thought of where are the emissions coming from? Where is it heaviest? As you can imagine, it's heaviest near the interchanges, on kind of busier freeways, that sort of thing. It's definitely going to be heavier on 99 than it is on 41. So that's the handout that you have. And then, of course, as always, and I'd certainly be remiss if we didn't mention this, we always want to kind of bring it back to that health indicator, right? We're talking about improving public health. This map and the map below just show those Cal and ViroScreen scores. So a lot of you are familiar with it, but it's essentially based on the different census tracts within the boundary. Where are the areas that score the highest, meaning the worst rates of the particular thing that we're talking about? So in this case, it's asthma. So the redder is worse. And then in this case, it's cardiovascular instances. So it's a lot of information, but I just kind of wanted to walk you through that as one piece. And just let you know that everything that I just showed you, you can actually go into a lot more detail on the emissions maps that we've had up for the past couple of years on the website. We are actually in the process of updating these. So we will certainly, by the time we get going with all of these projects, we certainly expect these to be updated with the most recent information. But I'm just going to quickly pop it up. I might even already have it open just to show you what it looks like live. So you can click on it and sort of understand, but same thing, you have where the schools are. The redder is darker, just means more. And you can just kind of click around and get a better understanding. Really what this all comes down to, of course, though, is based on this information, based on maybe a lot more in-depth scientific analysis, we need to first sort of understand, well, we want a baseline of like general areas, right, where people want to plant vegetative barriers. And that's where we got to this map of community suggestions. So I know a lot of you actually on this call supplied comments to this map, which I am forever grateful for. It's really been a great tool. Sorry, it's taking a second here to load. But this is the mapping tool that we are happy to keep sending out. We're happy to amend it to make it, if you guys want something that's more specific, maybe we ask different questions. So there's different icons on here. But the mapping tool, you can sort of already start to see almost like a little heat map, if you will, of where a lot of people think that projects should go. And so this is just as a tool for the committee to maybe start thinking, maybe we use this as step one. Step one is, okay, clearly we need projects in this area. Down here seems to be an issue. You click on these and you can see the actual comments that people left. And then based on that, then maybe we take an in-depth look at like wind direction and wind speed and where the best sort of scientific way, maybe employ, I know that there's partners that Mona is very familiar with working with, whose job it is to really understand the like most scientific, best place to place a vegetative barrier within an area that we identify. All of these are in that email that was sent out, so I'm certainly happy to drop them in the chat if you guys want to poke around a little bit more. But we thought that these, and I was happy that Naimeen brought them up, are just really good, useful tools for this committee to just kind of always keep on the forefront when it comes to getting down to the nitty-gritty once we're at that step in the process. I think that's all I had to share, but let me know if there are any questions.
Well, I do have a question, Jessica. So, but correct me if I'm wrong, but everything that you share is basically based on the inventory that you guys had since the beginning of the process. What I was thinking that would be even more helpful is to layer on top of that data that you guys have been collecting with the additional monitors that you have deployed, that it's gonna give you more localized data on the neighborhoods that were targeted. Like,
got it.
Roosevelt
Yeah,
High
no, we
School.
can certainly do something like that. It's a little different. So what we were showing was an inventory. So the inventory, I mean, you're very familiar, so I definitely, stop me if I'm over explaining, but the inventory is like, as a lot of you know, what's actually being emitted. So it's a very different number in the inventory than what we're actually monitoring. So that's a really great point, is that those are almost two different things, right? So we can certainly put together, maybe we'll have to think about it a little bit, but put together definitely maybe like places that we're seeing, if we're seeing bigger spikes. Yeah, that's a great idea. We will work with Chai and his team to see. What I would say though, or I shouldn't say though, what I will say in addition to that is I've noticed, which is I think a good thing so far, I've noticed when we've gotten a lot of those monitoring updates, we haven't really been seeing a lot of big spikes. So we'll definitely want to look at the trend. That's a great idea. Maybe, of course, maybe some of these areas that we're showing out here, I'm just thinking out loud, we can send, if we haven't already, the van and see if the van's picking up anything different. So that's an interesting thought. And then, so say all of that still comes back good. We can still, of course, rely on, if we need to, the emissions maps, but we'll definitely take a look at the monitoring. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I had some thoughts at the end. Thank you very much for sharing that information. Certainly, would anybody be able to speak from the Air District with regards to the Imperial efforts for creating, you know, a guidelines, and where does anybody share any of that?
Yeah, this is Todd DeYoung, the director of grants and incentives. I can speak to that a little bit and kind of let you know where we are with our efforts to get the project plan submitted to CARB. Just by way of a super quick background, as most of you know, so on the funding side, in order to fund these types of projects, we have to submit to CARB what's called a project plan. Because these types of projects are outside the guidelines of the pre-approved project types, in order to provide funding to these types of projects, we have to submit this plan to the Air Resources Board and get it approved. Once they approve it, then we can move forward with the funding. And so we've done that for several of the CERT measures to date, and we're about ready to submit, or we're getting very, very close to being able to submit the vegetative barriers and urban greening project plan. And it is based very much on what Imperial did. Obviously, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we want to utilize the resources and leverage what's already been done, so that we can get our project plan approved as quickly as possible and then move on to funding these great projects. In general, our project plan is very broad, and we're writing it essentially to allow a wide variety of projects to come in to the district for consideration. The process is essentially, we would open up a program, put out a call for projects, and then from there we would review in combination with the community steering committee. Did you want to stop me there, Naimeen?
No, at the end.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, you got it. You got it. And so in consultation with the community steering committee, we would review the projects that come in. And then once we have a consensus on the project criteria, the location, the tree types, the organization, that would be performing the work, once we have that dialed in and everybody's in agreement, then at that point we would move to offering a contract and getting all of the sort of the financial, the contracts and funding in place for that project, and then quickly move forward with actually planting the trees and that sort of thing. So we are about ready to release it. We've got a draft that's in kind of the final review stages right now of that project plan, based heavily on what Imperial already did. So we're not reinventing the wheel. CARB has already seen Imperial's, so when they see ours, they're going to hopefully be able to take a lot of what has already been done and what they've already worked through in the Imperial plan and work through ours very quickly. Our hope is that by mirroring it essentially to what was done in Imperial, that will expedite the approval process, and that we can get moving as quickly as possible. And I'd certainly be able to answer any questions, Naomi.
Yeah, actually, thank you for repeating Imperial so many times, because that was my question / suggestion.
Sure.
I had insomnia one of these nights, so I'm like, what about the best thing to do than to read the Imperial plan? So I read it. And I was amazed that a lot of the things that were included there were including like the criteria that you guys are going to consider to deem a project eligible or not. So I think my only comment would be to perhaps see that draft, that proposal that you're going to submit to CARB before you submit it, so that the steering committee, and especially this subgroup that has expressed more interest, might probably can chime in and give some ideas at this phase, not only after you had received the formal approval from CARB. So that's just my opinion, but I would like to hear from other steering committee members. What do they think?
Yeah, and that's a great comment, and we can certainly do that. Sort of what our approach has been to date is we've submitted a draft to CARB and put it out for comment, review, questions, suggestions, kind of at the same time, so that CARB can begin to look at it. And we've got this kind of iterative process going. We've gone back to CARB and we've added stuff and modified stuff. They've come to us through this process, and and it's really been sort of this back and forth. And so in order to at least get them something to start chewing on, we would love to submit it while you're reviewing it, and then we can incorporate any comments as that process is moving forward. Because what I don't want is to wait until it's perfect necessarily, until we get them something to start looking at. But if we can get them to start looking at the draft, and then we can provide them with some comments along the way, I think, at least from my perspective, that gives us the best option to quickly get it approved. Does that sound reasonable from your perspective?
Yeah, I think, if this is not going to be the last opportunity to actually give feedback, because it's more like a back and forth between you and CARB.
Yeah.
I like the idea of not wasting time, because what we have heard from the community members is that we want to move this process forward as fast as possible.
Right.
But
And
I guess I said that was just a comment based on what I read, but I don't know what my fellow committee members think.
sure.
Well, I'll tell you what I think. Okay, you guys, you're supposed to laugh at that. I would actually like a hard copy of the Imperial plan, because I would actually like to see it, and I will give you my comments on it. Also, too, once again, I'm going to have to ask, the question about, we do have Safe Camp 1 and 2 underneath an underpass, and they are going to need trees. And I'm just wondering if this could be a funding mechanism for that, or if the committee would consider that via grant program. It is not for long-term in the ground planting, but for basically transitional trees. Because when she gets set up where they're starting to transition people, then the trees can go someplace for final planting. So that's what I'm thinking of. So I hope that everybody's open to, you know, possibly that suggestion and that funding of that project. But anyway, I look forward to actually seeing a hard copy of the grant. Thank you.
Yeah, and what I can do, I thought maybe you can, if you share that via email with the group, I can share. You must have the Imperial draft, but I can also send it.
Yeah, we can certainly share the Imperial plan with everyone here. Yeah, absolutely. And we can get a hard copy to you, Lisa, as well. No problem.
Yeah, especially since I did grant writing and, you know, scoring and stuff for grants. So yeah, I look forward to seeing it.
And Lisa, I'll tell you from our experience at Tree Fresno working with Caltrans is there are permits for everything. So it's probably an encouragement permit.
I retired from Caltrans. I got it. Don't even worry.
But that's the procedure that they expect us to follow for permissions. So I think that when we want to plant a tree, and you're right, it's planting a tree there is probably not going to be the solution. And you know, it's going to be a challenge, but I think trying to bring it to attention by submitting a permit would probably be the most logical.
This is Ivanka. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you can't hear me. All right. I just would, I also agree that I would like to be able to see that, what is going to be submitted to CARB before it's finalized. And when we're talking about different, you know, in the future, what other groups that we could be a part of, or that can be, you know, what different type of programs we're looking at. Are you guys considering or taking into consideration the fact that we need to be working with the city regarding, I know you said Beautify Fresno, but Beautify Fresno and cleaning up is may not necessarily be as specific as we're talking about of planting trees for better air. So especially in the South Central area, where you have the South Central specific plan and the city's responsibility to mitigate damages as development is coming. Tree planting is a huge mitigation factor for that. So when we're talking about submitting things to CARB for specific programs, I'm still not visually clearly seeing how we're incorporating the city and city's responsibilities for what is also happening at the same time that 617 programming is happening. And it needs to be more connected to get the most out of all sources of funding.
So Ivanka, you certainly bring up a good point. And, you know, I think what we're talking about here in terms of CARB approval is really just kind of the shell that, you know, the mechanism that allows us then to create those partnerships and to, you know, we absolutely want to have the city involved in whatever organizations, you know, are necessary to bring to the table before we actually come forth with and approve an actual program or a project.
I'm not too sure on when you're talking about what you're submitting to CARB, if programming that needs to take place with the city is considered, needs to be considered, or is that completely, you know, can it happen, but still it being a separate process? Like if you're talking about naming programs do you have to name those programs that you're submitting to CARB as possibilities? No. Or just the framework of
is the framework, Ivanka.
Okay.
Yeah, simply the framework for, it's basically, here's how we would run the program. We would open it up, we would accept applications, and then we would consider them, pick the right ones, and fund them. I mean, that's just the general framework. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And Ivanka, I just want to say that I agree that there's different plans and elements that are happening in the city that we will need to connect with them. But the reason why we, for this particular meeting, invited Beautify Fresno is because they also have a Climate Corp fellows. So that was more like the synergy there. But
Okay.
definitely we know there's going to be other efforts and other plans to consider.
Great, thank you.
All right, and thank you very much, Todd, for sharing that information. Certainly, as I'm bringing up the discussion, as a Climate Action Corps fellow, I'm digging around research and reading things and seeing a guideline as a suggestion, and then certainly that's why I was probing and then bringing up that to the discussion as to what's a guideline, or like you mentioned, what's a mechanism that's going to say, hey, this is the grant, these are the parameters, this is how we're going to move forward. But thank you very much, Todd, to speaking to that. As we're moving forward here, again, we're doing really good on time. Thank you very much for staying. Everybody seems like we're all staying on topic and we're moving forward. I wanted to throw into the discussion there as far as what are thoughts on, as again, speaking to a survey or an instrument that's gonna maybe, the mapping tools are already a wonderful resource. They're capturing how much emissions or pollution, and certainly as I've looked at the guidelines, they're looking to use this iTree tool and a bunch of other different tools that are going to measure how much pollutants are going to be sequestered. But is there any other, I'm trying to think about another tool or instrument that's going to take in the community, specifically the South Central community? Any thoughts as far as, I know there was somebody had brought up, I think Nayamin, the Survey Monkey last time, but is anybody else that can bring into the discussion other thoughts or ideas as to, hey, we need to really plant trees here?
I have a question for the Air District. So Jessica, that tree, I can't remember well, but I don't think we used a tablet or anything. We just put dots in a map, or how did we submit it?
So that link is a live link. So that was used if whoever participated in that, which was a handful of folks, used it either on their phone or on their computer or on their tablet. The dot exercise, and I think Ivanka might have been one of them, Ed did a few, several people participated. The dot exercise is how we did the monitoring.
Oh, okay,
If
I was confused.
person, this would totally be a dot exercise. You know what I mean? Like, it's not ideal. It's kind of nice to do it digitally because we have this like nice digital space for it. Sorry, Ivanka, are you trying to, or are you just, I don't want to talk over you. Okay, she's not on mute. So it is nice because there are sometimes like, okay, we can attach a picture or you can see someone's comment on why they left it there. So it's a little more than a dot exercise, but obviously I don't think we're capturing everyone, right? Because it's like this digital medium that's difficult. You know, some things that we've done totally, you know, once we get there, it's totally possible. We did this in Stockton. Because they were not in person when we did their air monitoring exercise, they also had to do it sort of digitally. We had a meeting where that's what we did during the meeting. And we had breakout groups where there was like just a couple people chatting and they worked with one person who put those dots in for them. So you didn't have to be tech savvy. You could just verbalize where you wanted trees. And then we all came together in the main room at the end of the meeting and there were dots everywhere and it was great. So we could think of something like that once we get down to that point of like really honing in on places and actually getting more input. Because I agree with you, Aurelio, there needs to be a better way to capture community input.
Yeah, and on that note, I was also trying to be mindful of the opportunities that we could have. Even while we are, for example, we are participating in a variety of events where we are doing COVID education, field distributions, mass distributions, all these kinds of things. So that's why we put that in the agenda as an idea for consideration. We're not saying we're going to do it, but if you guys think it's a good idea, we thought of maybe bringing the tablet and asking people to use it. That's what I was asking. What kind of software does it need? Or that could be an option.
A tablet would work.
if we have connectivity issues, we can also blow up maps.
Yeah.
And people can put the little dots. So I think that, there's a variety of things that we can do, but we were just throwing out some ideas, but
I
wish
see.
to hear from the rest of the team.
Yeah. Well, I will just say from understanding how the tool works, that sounds like an awesome idea. And we can even, if we want to work separately offline here, Naimeen or Aurelio, whoever from your team, if you guys want to, we can create a different button so you know who came. So when you're out in the public, maybe their tree color is blue or something. So we kind of know, not that we want to weigh them any differently, but so we can see, you know what, a lot of the public members we talked to wanted this, a lot of the committee members wanted this, and we can really start to hone in on that map. So we can certainly make this tool whatever we need it to be.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, we got about 8 more minutes here. Again, we're all doing very, very, very well on time. As far as next steps for discussion, it sounds like we're already developing some points here. The sharing of this Imperial document with the guidelines. There sounds like there's a lot of really good opportunities that are coming upon us, whether it's through Tree Fresno, other volunteer opportunities that are going to be coming up through CCEGN as well. While we're still here, does anybody have any other questions for any of the people that have spoken?
Or I would like to speak to Isabel o Estela. ¿Tienen alguna sugerencia de cómo tomar opiniones de la gente para saber dónde quieren que plantemos los árboles?
Yo tengo una opinión.
Adelante.
Ok, me gustaría, yo como en veces también utilizo el autobús, hay muchas veces que hay las paradas del autobús donde no hay nada de sombra y en tiempo de calor está bien duro el calor y para uno estar esperando el autobús, en veces es bien duro. Me gustaría que donde no haya sombra, que pusieran un árbol. No sé.
Gracias, Isabel.
Isabel's comment, just for those of you on the call, she said that maybe she has an idea that maybe that what we do is that we go ahead and put a bus. Sorry, I'm trying to lower the call over here so you don't hear the interpreting. She said that maybe we can go ahead and utilize the bus shelters that are currently in place, and if they have no shelter, or no protection from the sun, especially during the summer, that she would like for us to go ahead and potentially put a tree right next to that bus stop.
Yo sí quiero dar otro comentario también. Cuando hay personas que son dueños de casa y a veces sí buscan en organizaciones como si les donan un árbol y a veces no se los quieren donar, porque así me tocó una vez que una señora es dueña de una casa y quería que le donaran un árbol y preguntó a una organización y no le quiso dar el árbol porque decía que ya no tenía fondos para dar árboles.
And she was just talking about, that was Esteban, she was just commenting about a situation and where a homeowner had actually requested from an organization a tree to plant in her home or on her property, and that they told her that they no longer had any funds to provide that service to her or provide the tree. So she was just sharing her information on that.
So I'd like to make a comment from Tree Fresno perspective, is that we do our best to at least respond to calls, especially from residents. If they are interested in a tree, whether it's on city property or whether it's on their own property. I will say that there is a requirement through our grants for irrigation to be in place, and that sometimes can be a limitation. So I encourage the dialogue. So especially if there's a place on city property, and I think that Mark would agree with this, that we explore the opportunity for if there's a bus stop and there's a well there to put a tree that maybe was once there, or we can get irrigation started. So we investigate those situations and do our best. It takes us a few months, but eventually we can get a tree planted in those particular places in high need areas. So we're open to it. So we do not like to say actually no to trees anywhere, but sometimes we're just limited by our grants.
Hey, I'd like to take that a step further. It's Greg Barfield, City Manager's Office, that if there is a location that you believe needs a bus shelter, please forward that either to the Air Board staff or directly to me, and we will evaluate that immediately.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, and thank you very much. So,
Ok, voy a investigar bien exactamente el lugar.
Gracias, Isabel.
Gracias. Gracias.
She'll share that information for us or to us.
and it looks like we have about time for just one last question. Does any other questions, folks? Well, I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening. Again, certainly a lot of really great discussion here about creating vegetative barriers. Looking forward to continuing the discussion and moving forward with creating climate change efforts, whether within the AB 617 South Central community. There will be, here shortly, you will be receiving a doodle survey or poll requesting your availability for an up and coming meeting. Again, thank you very much all for joining us today. And I hope everybody has a really great evening, and thank you all for all your wonderful participation.
Thanks, Aurelia. You did a great job.
Great job.
Bye.
Appreciate it all. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Have a good evening.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Gracias.
Okay, de nada.
Adiós.
Gracias a ustedes.
Jess and Zon,
Gracias.
stay on the line. Did we already lose Jess?